So this is one of those moments in Washington where the story isn't just what was said. It's what can't possibly both be true. Because within just 10 days, two of the most powerful officials inside the Department of Justice told the public completely different things about the same investigation. One said the case was closed. The other said the investigation was still ongoing. And the problem is, the second statement happened under oath in front of Congress. Which means this isn't just a political contradiction. This is the kind of moment that makes judges start asking a very dangerous question. Was someone just caught lying under oath? And if you follow the timeline closely, it leads directly to Attorney General Pam Bondi. Because while her department was telling the public there was nothing left to prosecute in the Epstein files, Bondi sat before Congress and claimed the exact opposite. She said there were active investigations still happening inside her office. And the moment lawmakers started asking questions, the story started falling apart.
On another important topic that has been raised by both colleagues on both sides of the aisle with respect to the Epstein case. A few questions. One, Jeffrey Epstein was charged in July 2019 for sex trafficking under the Trump administration in his first term. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman.
And that Ghislaine Maxwell was charged in 2020 also under the Trump administration, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So it is safe to say that the administration led on that issue and that there was silence in the previous administration. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman. Almost complete silence from everyone who's been trying to still talk about Epstein. They didn't say a word under the Biden administration. Nothing.
Now on the surface, this exchange looked routine. A lawmaker was simply walking through the timeline of the Jeffrey Epstein case. Epstein was charged in 2019 during Donald Trump's presidency, and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, was charged the following year. Those are basic facts. But then the questioning took a turn, because the congressman wasn't just asking about the past. He was trying to figure out what the Department of Justice is doing right now. And that's where the story gets strange. Because earlier that same week, the Department of Justice had already told the public something very different. Just 10 days before this hearing, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche went on CNN, and he made a very clear statement. The Department of Justice, he said, had reviewed the Epstein files. They had gone through the evidence, and according to him, there was nothing left that could lead to new prosecutions. The review was done. The case was closed. No new charges. No new investigations. That statement came directly from one of the highest-ranking officials in the DOJ, which should have settled the issue. Except then, Pam Bondi testified in Congress, and what she said created a massive contradiction.
And I want to make one other point, and then another question, though, that is important. I want to make one observation, that is that we've heard the information today, which is troubling, that Jane Doe's, that victims' information was made public and was unredacted in the files that were released on Friday. So my question is, some of us had argued when we were dealing with the discharge petition in Congress that when Congress inserted itself into the process, that we needed to be very careful to ensure that we were protecting victims. So a question that is both, I just want to make that clear that some of us were fighting for that here and we didn't get a chance to amend it or change it. So that was concerning. But a question a little more pointed, I have to say, is why though were the victims' names released that shouldn't have been? That there were names in the files that these Jane Does, that their names shouldn't have been made public when there were some accusers whose names were redacted. That's question one. And question two was that Ghislaine Maxwell was put in jail for trafficking minors. Rightly so, and you properly said here at this table, you hope she dies in jail. Well, I want to know, will anyone besides her or Epstein, which I congratulate President Trump's previous administration and this Department of Justice for continuing all of that, but that they were indicted, but will anyone else be indicted and prosecuted under this, given the information that's in front of us? So two questions.
Thank you for letting me answer that. They didn't want to hear my answer on the other side. Yes, given the tight time frame of 30 days, I believe we got everything released within a little over 60 days. I'm talking as fast as I can. My time is up. We did the best we could immediately. If everyone's been coming to view the documents, if someone's name should not have been redacted, we're releasing it. If someone's name was redacted, we said right away, was not redacted and should have been, meaning a victim. We went back and redacted it. We're doing everything we can based on the tight time frame and over 3 million pages that we released that Donald Trump signed for pure transparency. Second, what was your second question?
About whether another individual will be indicted
absolutely.
and
Thank you for
prosecuted.
asking that. And they never wanted to hear the answer to that. We have pending investigations in our office.
That one sentence changes everything, because if Bondi is telling the truth, then the Deputy Attorney General was wrong. But if Blanche was telling the truth, then Bondi just told Congress something that isn't accurate under oath. And those two possibilities can't both exist at the same time. Either the case is closed, or there are ongoing investigations. You can't have both. And when contradictions like that appear inside sworn testimony, judges and investigators start paying attention. Because under federal law, knowingly making a false statement to Congress can be considered perjury. Now, to be clear, nobody has charged Bondi with that. But the problem here isn't just the contradiction. It's what was happening behind the scenes at the same time. Because while Bondi was telling Congress investigations were ongoing, her department was releasing millions of pages of documents. And the way those documents were released created another scandal entirely. The Department of Justice released more than 3 million pages connected to the Epstein investigation. The stated goal was transparency. The Trump administration said the public deserved to see the files. But when reporters and survivor advocates started reviewing those documents, they noticed something disturbing. The names of dozens of survivors were exposed. Some of them were minors at the time of the abuse. In total, journalists later discovered at least 43 survivors had their full names revealed in the release. Some appeared over 100 times in the documents. Even home addresses were visible through basic keyword searches. Meanwhile, the names of many powerful individuals mentioned in the files were heavily redacted, which means the people who were abused were exposed, while many of the people accused of abusing them were protected. And that raised an obvious question. How did something like that happen?
We did the best we could immediately. If everyone's been coming to view the documents, if someone's name should not have been redacted, we're releasing it. If someone's name was redacted, we said right away was not redacted and should have been, meaning a victim. We went back and redacted it. We're doing everything we can based on the tight time frame and over 3 million pages that we released that Donald Trump signed for pure transparency.
Bondi told lawmakers the situation came down to time. She said the department had a 30-day deadline, and they were working through millions of documents. But survivor advocates quickly pushed back, because according to multiple attorneys, they had already given the DOJ a list of 350 names that needed to be protected. That list was provided months earlier, which means the department had plenty of time to run a simple keyword search. Yet apparently that didn't happen. Instead, the documents were released with those names exposed, and the backlash was immediate. Victim advocates were furious. Lawmakers from both parties demanded answers. And suddenly, the transparency effort was starting to look more like a major failure inside the Justice Department. But then, the story took another strange turn. Because lawmakers began noticing something unusual while reviewing the files themselves. Members of Congress were invited to review the unredacted Epstein files inside the Department of Justice. That's part of normal congressional oversight. Lawmakers are supposed to check how federal agencies handle sensitive investigations. But during one of those review sessions, Attorney General Pam Bondi was photographed holding a document. And according to multiple reports, that document appeared to contain a log of exactly which files a congresswoman had searched. In other words, the Justice Department might have been tracking what members of Congress were reading. That accusation exploded across Capitol Hill. Because if true, it means the DOJ was effectively monitoring lawmakers during an oversight investigation.
Lawmakers are accusing Attorney General Pam Bondi of spying on their search history within the unredacted Epstein files. This comes after Bondi was seen at a congressional committee hearing earlier this week, holding what appeared to be a list of files searched by Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. CBS News Justice correspondent Scott McFarland joins us now live. Scott, what do we know about this?
We know that the week began with the Epstein files being an absolute hot mess, and the week is ending with the Epstein files being an absolute hot mess. In this incarnation of the scandal, members of Congress who've been invited to view the unredacted, unreleased files at the Department of Justice say they're being tracked. They're being monitored, and their searches inside those files are being chronicled and cataloged by the Trump administration. They don't like that. That is a overstepping, they say, an encroachment on their powers, on their autonomy, and they want the administration to stop. There'll likely be requests for internal investigations as to why they're being inspected, why they're being watched. But this just perpetuates a story that has been going for months now and is not going away for the administration. They're being accused of not properly being transparent in handling these files, and the week ends with that remaining the overarching complaint.
Scott, many lawmakers and Epstein survivors have raised some questions after Epstein's co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell was transferred to a minimum security prison camp last year. And this all happened after she met with Bondi's deputy, Todd Blanche. What are lawmakers and survivors hoping to learn about that transfer?
They're not getting answers even though they're asking the questions. This came up briefly during a hearing midweek here at the Capitol, but the Attorney General didn't really declaratively answer the questions other than to say she was unaware of this transfer. Let me reset the story. The Bureau of Prisons, which operates under the Trump administration, transferred Ghislaine Maxwell to a low-security prison camp in the hours after she did an interview with the Deputy U.S. Attorney General who had some questions for her. That is not the place, a prison camp for convicted sex offenders doing 20 years behind bars. The administration has not said why she was transferred, if she will stay there, but for now, with a projected release date of 2037, Ghislaine Maxwell is at a prison camp in Texas and still angling for a pardon.
Now step back and look at the entire picture. First, the Department of Justice says the Epstein case is closed. Then the Attorney General says investigations are ongoing. At the same time, millions of pages of documents are released with victim names exposed. Then, lawmakers reviewing those documents believe the DOJ is tracking their searches. And on top of all of that, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's accomplice, is suddenly transferred to a minimum security prison camp, a move that happened shortly after she met with the Deputy Attorney General. Lawmakers have asked why. So far, they haven't gotten a clear answer. At this point, the Epstein file controversy has become a massive political problem for the administration, because critics say the pattern is impossible to ignore. Victims were exposed, the powerful were protected, investigations appear contradictory, and transparency efforts created even more questions. Supporters of Donald Trump argue the administration is simply trying to release information the public has demanded for years. But opponents say the release was mishandled so badly that it undermined the very transparency it promised. And the longer the contradictions remain unresolved, the more pressure builds on the Department of Justice to explain what actually happened. And this is where the story becomes bigger than just one hearing. Because when contradictions appear once, they might be mistakes. When they appear twice, they raise eyebrows. But when they appear over and over again in the same direction, people start calling it something else, a pattern. And that's exactly what critics say they're seeing now. The Deputy Attorney General says there's nothing left to prosecute. The Attorney General says investigations are still active. Victims' identities are exposed while powerful names are hidden. Lawmakers say they're being monitored during oversight, and key decisions inside the Justice Department remain unexplained. Maybe there are answers for all of it. Maybe there's a simple explanation waiting to be revealed. But until those explanations appear, the contradictions will continue raising the same uncomfortable question. Was this transparency, or was it something else entirely? Because when a cover-up happens quietly, it can stay hidden. But when contradictions happen this publicly, eventually the pattern itself becomes the evidence. And that's why this story isn't going away anytime soon.